call to order the hearing on Senate Bill 294 and recognize I have no prime sponsor here.
Would you like me to introduce it?
Yes, ma'am. That'd be great, Senator. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Senator Cindy Rosenwald from District 13, and I am here to introduce Senate Bill 294.
Thank you for the introduction, ma'am. Is there a sheet? There is no one signed up to speak on Senate Bill 294, so I will close the hearing. call to order the hearing on Senate Bill 292 and recognize, in lieu of Senator Lang, our very own Grant Bossy.
Thank you very much, Senator. My name is Grant Bossy, Deputy Chief of Staff for the New Hampshire Senate, here to introduce Senate Bill 292 FNA on behalf of Senator Lang, the bill's prime sponsor. Every year in the budget, the legislature sets the amount of what used to be called catastrophic aid for local school districts for the most expensive special education students in that district. That's based on the best forecast we have at the time. Those forecasts turned out to be short by several $1 million this year, leaving local school districts with higher special education expenses than anticipated, given the flat funding that was in the state budget. This bill would authorize a warrant from the Education Trust Fund surplus to make up that difference, and so that the state would be meeting its non-binding but still important obligation to fund those students who cost the most to local districts. Senator Lang believes that the Education Trust Fund can absorb this and thinks this would take care of the FY 2025 problem. He also suggests we take a look in the larger budget on how much we allocate for special education going forward. I know that's a priority in the governor's budget. It will surely be a priority in the House and in the Senate. He thanks you for your consideration of Senate Bill 292.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Bossy. Senator Lang, would you like to speak to your bill?
Yeah, your stream's not working. I'm running in my office waiting for you to start your committee. It hasn't shown up yet.
Oh, thanks for the heads up.
So that's why I wasn't here. Again, I thank you for the introduction of the bill. Again, the goal of this bill is to make sure we don't have what happened this year. This year, through probably an error, we allocated $36 million for special education, yet we ended up with a $50 million expense. If you don't understand how that works, when that occurs, that balance goes back to the local to the communities. They only get a prorated amount of their education funding, and then the local communities have to pick up the difference. So the goal of this bill is not to have that happen again, and to say that if we should have a shortfall. And one of the reasons I believe we ended up with that shortfall is, I don't know if you remember, but last year we changed special education to allow it to go to 22 years old instead of 21, but I don't think we adapted our budget to account for it. And that's the reason we ended up with a shortfall. So what this bill does is, again, if there's a shortfall, it would just allow the Commissioner of Education and the governor to withdraw from the Education Trust Fund the shortfall, so it doesn't end up as a local property tax hit on the local communities. Because as you know, with some of these towns, one student could walk in with a $250,000 expense, and it'll just blow up a budget, pushing it back. So our goal is to allow if we ever should have that shortfall, to be able to go back to the Education Trust Fund and make up that shortfall.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions of the Senator? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Make it dive for the microphone. Thanks. Thank you. I think I heard Grant say that the Education Trust Fund could absorb this extra expense. I'm wondering if you've looked at whether the governor's budget with extra things put into the Education Trust Fund, we would still be able to absorb it.
So thank you for the question. So I'm not going to look forward. I don't have a crystal ball to see what it's actually going to end up and where it's going to go. But what I will say that in the previous year, again, we ended up with $125 million. I think $100 million is the surplus of the Education Trust Fund this year. And had this bill been in place, we would have been able to make up that $15 million without an impact to anybody. And those towns and local property taxpayers would not have had to pay it.
Thank you.
Further questions? Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Lang, for taking my question. I'm looking at lines 22 through 25, which is an extra designation of $250,000 for communities of 1,000 or fewer to mitigate impact of special education costs when emergency assistance is necessary to prevent financial harm to such district or community. When a student who needs that really intensive aid that we used to call catastrophic aid.
Catastrophic aid.
Just for my, edification, do we have a new name that we now use as a different phrase?
I still think it's used as catastrophic aid. It's still a phrase.
Okay. So when a community absorbs the impact of a student who needs that level of aid, would we not want to just, make that available for any community?
So-
The cost would be catastrophic anywhere, really.
So thank you for the question. Again, understand the only changes to the existing law that I'm doing is what's in bold, right? All of the
No, I
rest of it is
understand.
existing law, and it wasn't my intent to change that. My intent was to make sure that if we ever have a funding shortfall again, communities don't get stuck with that cost.
May I follow up?
Follow up.
Understood. Given that one of my community has reached out to the governor's office and the Department of Education because there is a significant special education shortfall. We definitely don't fall under the 1,000 or fewer, and I know, or I can imagine there are other communities. If mine is, there's got to be other ones. Would that be something that, you would consider as a friendly amendment?
Well, again, I don't know that necessarily it's needed, and the mere fact that if we have in the funding like shortfall we had now, there's still a funding shortfall, this allows them to fully fund it and give 100% back. So you wouldn't need that, you wouldn't need this component of it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
There was no one else signed up to speak.
One more thing, I wanted to say that the language was drafted with the cooperation of Department of Education.
Thank you. There's no one else signed up to speak on Senate Bill 292. There is one person who signed in support, but indicated he did not wish to speak. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this bill? Seeing none, I close the hearing on Senate Bill 292. We have 3 minutes. Time being 1:20, I will call to order the hearing on Senate Bill 296, recognize in lieu of the prime sponsor, Mr. Bossy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is still Grant Bossy, and I am still, to my knowledge, the Deputy Chief of Staff for the New Hampshire Senate, here to introduce Senate Bill 296 on behalf of Senator David Rochefort, the bill's prime sponsor. He thanks you for the courtesy. HHS is running a little long today. This builds on the New Hampshire Successful Education Tax Credit Program, which has been in place for several years, currently serving, I believe, roughly 900 New Hampshire students, in which businesses may donate to a scholarship fund and qualify for a credit against their business taxes. And then these families can use that money to find the education that best suits their child. Similar to discussions you're having around the Education Freedom Account program, this bill would remove the income limit on qualifying for this program and make the Education Tax Credit Program universal for New Hampshire families. At the same time, it would increase the targeting to the families most in need. Currently, 40% of scholarships must be awarded to children of families who qualify for the federal free and reduced meal program. This would increase that to 50%, ensuring that fully half of the program would be going to those New Hampshire families most in need. Senator Rochefort believes that just as we do not have a means test when you show up at your local district school or your charter school, there should not be a means test on New Hampshire's school choice programs. He thanks you for your consideration of Senate Bill 296.
Thank you, Mr. Bossy. Are there any questions, Mr. Senator Rosenwald?
I have several. And so I'm trying to understand this bill. If we remove the income cap, then students who are not qualified for free and reduced lunch would also qualify, correct?
Currently there are essentially three tiers. There's free and reduced lunch, there's the income cap, which is higher than free and reduced lunch, and then there's everybody else. So this would essentially just say there's free and reduced lunch and there's everybody else. Everybody would qualify, but half to be below that free and reduced lunch threshold.
Okay, could I follow up?
Follow up.
Thank you. So when I look back at the history of this scholarship, the most money that's available for scholarships is $5.1 million. This bill doesn't raise that cap. But what we've been collecting, well, last year what we collected was $2.1 million available for scholarships. So am I correct in understanding that basically if you make more kids eligible for the scholarship, then any kid who gets it is going to get less because the total amount of money, both the cap and what's collected, isn't going up?
I will have to get that question to Senator Rochefort.
Okay, and one more if I could. There's, according to the LBA, there's nothing in state law that prevents a family or a student from getting both the access to the EFA program and the scholarship. And so my question is, would he consider a friendly amendment saying you can get one or the other, but not both?
I can ask him that. I don't know if there's any overlap, but I know some of the people who administer both programs happen to be in the room. That might be an appropriate question for slightly later today.
Right, there's just nothing in state law that prevents it.
I will forward that question to Senator
Thank you.
Rochefort. Thank you.
Any further? Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. Unusual situation, but I am particularly concerned. So I have two questions, but this one is particularly concerned about line 22, lines 21 and 22, which removes the auditing process, no threshold being met and lines 12 through 15 are completely zeroed out. So we're not auditing who's getting access, which with all other forms of state aid, sans the voucher program, which we know is, ballooning in cost, at a time when we are really, we are hearing from the governor's office and from all places that government efficiency should be a priority because this is a tight budget year. Why would we get rid of this really important bumper, this safeguard for the program?
That is a policy question that I would direct to Senator Richard.
Okay, well, I appreciate the opportunity to ask it on the record. So second question, maybe, otherwise we'll defer to Senator Rochford. So going back, the bill proposes to raise the portion of students on free and reduced lunch to 50% and then opens up the other 50% to any income. But is there what I don't see, or maybe I'm not seeing, is what are the protocol guidelines? Maybe you're going to throw it into rules. I don't know, for allocating that 50%. Like, will there be a preference for the low income students to get access to that first before it gets distributed to, is it going to be a first come, first serve, or are we going to prioritize low-income students?
Well, there's currently a priority for 40%. This changes the number. It doesn't change the policy. So I would think it would be the same mechanism in place. The scholarship organization would have to ensure that 50% of the students, rather than 40% of the students, qualified for free and reduced price meals.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Wilson.
you.
Chair recognizes Ms. Mary Wilkie. Wilkie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Mary Wilkie. I'm a retired school teacher, public school teacher, and I live in Concord. And I'm here to oppose this bill, although I do have some questions that I had hoped I might hear the answers to before because there's some confusions in here. But one specific concern I have, and maybe this may be what Senator Altshuler was also getting at, is that if you don't have it to meet an income threshold, but you have to have, if you don't have to re-up every year, you don't have to prove your eligibility every year for income-wise, then are that 50% who are considered, below the level for free and reduced lunch, will some of them income out of that category, get more income, but still be considered in that 50%? I hope that makes sense. I'm just not sure if that's the way it's worded. It's unclear to me if that's the case. But I had some broader issues with this. One is, this is a program that just goes under the radar. It's under the auspices of the Department of Revenue Administration. And I don't know that there's ever been any kind of an audit by anybody. We know that the EFA program had a compliance review by the Department of Education, which did find some irregularities in eligibility and residency determinations that I know have been addressed since then. But I'm just wondering, has anybody looked at those in this program? And wouldn't it be good to check into that before expanding the program in any way? Another issue that I've had, the reason I say it flies under the radar is I once had just a question about how some of the, I was looking at the reports that are filed every year, and I had a question about some of the numbers, and I called the DRA just to ask, how do you interpret this, how this should be calculated? And the person I talked to said, we don't even look at those reports. We would only look at it if there was an audit, and that only, a random audit. And that happens very rarely because basically, he didn't use these words, but they're, I don't know, understaffed or overworked or something. And then he said, or if you want, you can file a fraud report, and then we'll look into it. I said, no, I have no reason to think there's any fraud going on. I just want to know how to interpret this. And it was clear that, at least at that point a few years ago, nobody was looking at them. And so I worry about continuing to expand a program that nobody outside the people running it are looking at. And I have no reason to think they're doing anything wrong. I just think you always should have somebody else looking. I do have one worry about it, which is that I've looked at the reports since 2013, and between 2015 and 2022, and I stopped my analysis then, and I just haven't had a chance to update it, but between 2015 and 2022, 87% of the scholarships that were going to students at private schools and using them for tuition were going to religious schools, and 30% of them were going to 4 specific religious schools that were partner schools of one of the scholarship organizations. And 11% had gone to one specific school. And I'm not sure how that happened, because there are a lot of, for instance, in 2021, I think it was in 2022, there were 64 private schools had students with education tax credit scholarships, but 24% of the scholarships were going to those 4 schools. And it just looks to me like there's something askew there. I don't know what happened and why, but somebody should look at it, because it looks discriminatory to me. That may not be what's going on. I understand there may be other reasons why it happened, but Concord Christian Academy set up one of the scholarship organizations, and they're the ones that got 11% of the grants over those 7 or 8 years. And one last issue is double dipping, which was brought up. If, under this bill, up to 50% of the recipients could be wealthy people. And we don't know how many people fit in the double dipping category. The first year of the EFA program, that was reported, but as far as I know, it hasn't been reported since. But I noticed a family was highlighted by the scholarship organization that had 8, this was in 2022, had 8 children who were being homeschooled. And it looked from the article like they may have been receiving both EFAs and education tax credit scholarships. I don't know for sure, but if you just assume a family with 8 children who's homeschooling, and each child, let's just assume one of those children has a disability, so they get differentiated aid for that through the EFA program. If you calculate it out, that family could have gotten $89,000 that year by double dipping if they got the maximum scholarship under the education tax credit scholarship. If they got the average education tax credit scholarship, they would have gotten $65,000 that year, assuming one of their children had a disability, so they got that differentiated aid. And if you're giving that, I mean, I have a problem with that anyway, but if you're giving that to wealthy people, I have a real problem with it, because that's a lot more money per child than the state is giving to on behalf of our students in public schools. And until we have students in some public schools that can't get the basics, like language, music, etc. And I would think that directing that kind of money to families that don't really need it would be a misallocation of our very limited resources. And for all of those reasons, I ask you to vote ITL or recommend ITL on this bill. I have some written, I've written a submission if you'd like it.
Yes, please give it to the clerk.
Okay.
Any
I
questions
have
of Ms.
one.
Wilkie? Seeing none, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
There's no one else signed up to speak. Representative Potenza, are you here to speak?
Which bill are you on? Which bill?
This is Senate Bill 296.
Yes. Sorry. Okay.
Proceed. Thank you.
I need a minute. I've run back and forth. So I was here, and I thought it was 101. Then I thought it was LOE 101. I came back to 103.
Your timing is impeccable. That's about it.
I missed all the great testimony. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. For the record, Representative Kelly Potenza, Stratford District 19. So, Senate Bill 296, in the simplest of terms, removes the income limits from the education tax credit scholarship so that a child from a family that goes $1 over the income limits does not get kicked out of the program, which is what is happening now. It also increases the requirement for the assistance of low, which is the free and reduced price lunch income level for children. The original educational tax credit law was passed in 2012. And as we know now, with the continuous discussion about EFAs, as a body, we value the stability for children that participate in our school choice programs. This bill really creates that stability. The scholarship organization will need to ensure assistance for low, free, and reduced priced lunch, income level children, but also will not have to remove a child that wants to continue due to the family income restrictions or fluctuations in a sense. In addition, the education tax credit scholarships are from private contributions. So for the partisan level that we have on these discussions with education freedom accounts, that's not here. It doesn't have to be here in this conversation because it doesn't apply. So they're voluntarily donated for the benefit of these children, so eliminating the barriers to scholarship assistance is reasonable. So if you have the bill in front of you, there's a couple changes. It basically, under V3, it basically has in here, or 21 because of new special ed law, which is in here under, so that's a little different. Child with a disability means any person between the ages of 3 and 21, that would be inclusive. Under A1, it switches from public and kindergarten to first graders. Under 2, prior year switchers from public and kindergarten or first graders. And then number 3, it basically is everyone else. So the change, of course, how the law reads right now for the education tax credit is 40%, so this ups it to 50%. It helps more low-income children. That is the first priority of this program. It's been hugely successful, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone speak against this program, which we have that other conversation. We won't talk about the conversation in regards with education freedom accounts. So, and then under E, the data based on free and reduced lunch designation in the first application year. So that's basically the changes, and I'm really excited to be a co-sponsor of this bill. I think with all of the discourse that takes place in regards with schools and funding, this is a no-brainer where we can have Republicans and Democrats come together and open up something that truly is for low-income students, won't kick them out of the program, and we don't have to worry about taxpayer funds. So.
All right. Thank you, Representative. Any questions? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here and taking my question. Since this bill does not increase the amount of money that's available for the scholarships, but opens up the number of children who are eligible to get them, and there's no prohibition on getting both the scholarship and an EFA, does it concern you that children would actually have access to less scholarship money? Because we're not increasing the amount of money available, but we're making the pie bigger.
There's the person that handles the program is here in the audience, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, but this this is coming out of a completely separate bucket that wouldn't talk, so it wouldn't mean that there's anyone that it would pull from the EFA program. So they're separate in that sense. So I don't see how this would do what you're saying, because one is truly taxpayer funds and the other is not. So this basically, because it's going from 40% to 50%, you're going to open up the program, one, you're going to be able to, and then there's no income restrictions, which is good. So if someone with the fluctuation can get to stay in, that's positive. But because this is privately funded, we're not looking at, if the program raises, millions and millions of more dollars, that's wonderful. And that will go, but I can't see this having such a big increase because it is private funding, and those things are based upon how many people are actually donating into this program. So they're totally two separate things. One's not going to impact the other.
Can I follow? Thank you. So there's no prohibition in state law against participating in both programs. But the effect of this bill is to dilute the tax credit scholarship because more children will be eligible for the same amount of money. So I guess that's my question is, would you rather help more low-income students with actually a declining amount of scholarship money that's been available to the program? Or do you want to continue to allow families to double dip?
So I don't look at it as double dipping because one is private, the other's not. So, but I do have to say that, and Ms. Baker can speak to this more so than I can. So let's say, for example, the private donations equaled, $6 million last year, or, let's say 2022. It's not like this steady, huge jump. So it's not as there's it's going to pull from one. Like there's enough students in regards with this for it to go around. The education tax credit gets cut off. They don't have, it's not as if it's like just stays open the entire time. You have to fill in the application, all of that kind of stuff. And there's a limited amount because there's limited funds. So it's not going to pull from anything. They're totally two separate buckets. So, and we haven't had a problem where there are students that are not utilizing the program. It always runs out.
Thank you.
Is it? I hope am I making sense?
Senator Altschuler, you can ask your question, but the program administrator is in the audience, and we can call her up if she's willing to answer questions, and she may be the best qualified person.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since thank you, Representative, the only co-sponsor that has been here. I'd like to talk to the co-sponsor, and then perhaps if the program administrator comes, I don't know if she's on the list to speak, but nonetheless, may I ask a question of the co-sponsor? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I also was running around here today, so I get the out-of-breath thing. Totally understand. So I have a question for you, but I think there needs to be a level set, because in your testimony, you testified that the businesses that are putting money into the program were doing it charitably, and that is not true. The businesses make a donation into the scholarship fund in exchange for a tax credit.
Yes, I know.
And so that is tax money that would have gone to the business profits or business enterprise tax, which would go into our general fund. So they're getting a benefit. It's not charitable. It's a tax benefit for them to do that. So that said, it is not a nonprofit charity. You know, they are not, it is not out of the goodness of their heart. They are getting a benefit out of this.
I agree.
So, if we're looking at the low incomes, when you're crafting this, and discussing it, I'm looking at lines 12 through 15. And do you need a copy?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Because I don't have it.
Hold on, wait, there's one coming.
Okay.
So lines 12 from 15, which zeroes out, just eliminates the 300% altogether. So why not instead have created language that gives a transition period or a buffer, or rather than just like lifting it and letting all the wealthy kids jump into the program?
Okay, so, you know, not that I want to divulge my personal information, but so I was part of this program. So our family was part of this program. When COVID hit, my husband didn't get his bonus, and we were able to utilize this. And it was such a blessing for our family, just because of what went on. And so it doesn't work like that. So, and I don't have all of the numbers, but I'll get you every bit of the numbers. So when you say, I understand, like taking it off, like there's going to be this flood. It's not going to work like that. It doesn't work like that. It's already so limited right now. Based upon the whole point of this bill is to be able to keep people into a program. We were kicked out of the program. We don't qualify anymore. So you don't have to change schools, all of that kind of stuff that is just so disruptive to a family. We had other hardships on our family with a daughter that has a severe medical illness, but that's beside the point. But I know, because I know these families. So that's really the point of this bill, is so then we don't have those restrictions. There's not going to be a flood. The first priority is the free and reduced lunch students. There's not that many, and they can give you those numbers that are coming in afterwards. So this bill, I would love the program director to basically give you a number of how many could be included in the program from this bill. I would say it would definitely be probably under 100 kids, because it all goes based upon how much of those private. I understand what you're saying. It's not like a donation. I know how it works. I wasn't trying to, put anything over the committee here. It is a tax credit. They do get a tax credit. That's the name of the program. I think it's a wonderful design. If people want to be able to put their money towards that, I think it's great how it was all designed. But I don't believe that it comes anywhere near to what you're thinking with numbers at all. So. And she can speak to that, but there isn't some floodgate. You're not talking about another 1,000 kids that are going to be able to get into the ETC from this.
How do you know that?
It is, the applications open up. They're only open for literally a few months. It's not well known. It's really communicated to those students that and families that are looking for some different options for their children. I have to say that I know some families that were in the program that were during COVID. It was such a blessing for them. A single mother in Manchester, because it just didn't work, and it's not one thing. And people are very confused about it too. Most people don't even understand or know about the ETC. How it worked was really to help these low-income families to have different options that were just better suited for their children. I have a daughter that had an IEP, that she wasn't getting what she needed at the school, couldn't wear a mask, all of these different types of things. So it really, how it was designed was perfect. And, put the EFA out of your mind, because that's where a lot of people go with this. And, pros, against, I don't care about that. This program, how it was designed was to help low-income students. And then there was a little bit left, like that, could possibly, it was at 300%, that might get some other students in there. But it opens up for the application and it closes pretty quickly. It's not a rolling option like education freedom accounts, because it's very limited. And all of the data and numbers for how much has come in with private donations and how the program, where it started and where it is now, could all come from the director. And but yeah, this is just a fix. We were thrown out of the program when we still needed it. So my kid for the last 2 years hasn't been in school, and she can only eat based upon a tube. So if she doesn't have the tube right now, she can't take food. Nothing stays down. No food, no drink. So this could really help our family, since our medical bills for the last 2 years are about $1.7 million and over $40,000 out of pocket. My husband makes a good living, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't count. This could have been a huge blessing for my kid, that now we're going to have to spend about $4,000 for a tutor and for online education, because she doesn't want to go to school. She doesn't want anybody to see that. So, this program is fantastic. I know where Democrats and Republicans just fight all the time about education freedom accounts, and you know what? I don't know what's going to happen. But this program is fantastic, and how it was designed, and it takes away all that noise that's coming from homeschool families that don't want it, people that don't want their tax dollars spent on that, public school proponents. It's just, in every bit of the data that you need for this, it's very different. And that's why a lot of people really don't understand it. They don't know about it. Most families don't apply for both. The families that apply for both are the ones that are usually at the point where they're very, low income. Because $5,000 isn't going to do anything if you're going to try to get your son or daughter a tutor and then private school. That doesn't, that's normally like between $14,000 and $15,000. So I would love if she wants to speak, or if you want her to speak, that'd be great. I'll follow up with every bit of your questions to put your mind at ease. I know where you're coming from. I don't want you to think that it opens up the floodgates and, oh my gosh, there's going to be 1,000 kids in this program, because it doesn't work like that. So.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Representative, for your testimony. Mr. Mers, you signed in, but you did not indicate whether or not you wish to speak. I know several members of the committee have questions. Are you willing to take them?
Yeah, I wrote technical assistance as needed.
Yes. As Mr. Mers takes your seat, I ask the committee politely, please. The purpose here is to gain information, ask questions, and get answers, not to engage in debate. And so I ask you to refrain from that. Thank you. Please provide your name for the record.
Kate Baker DeMars from Children's Scholarship Fund. I administer, with, of course, my team, the Education Tax Credit Scholarship Program.
Okay. Questions of Mr. Mers? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Thank you for taking my question. So I asked for the latest report from DRA on this program. I just want to make sure my numbers are right. There's basically been $2 million, so 40% of the ceiling of 5.1 million has been made available.
So it's 5.1 in available credits, which
Right.
means we could raise up to $6 million in any program year The program year is July to July. So it's
Right.
like it runs on a school year.
Okay, so let's say you could raise $6 million. The number of scholarships granted was 268 in the last report.
The number of students, I'll pull it up because I think it's more like
Well,
900.
the number of scholarships.
So I'm going right to the Department of Revenue's website, and I'm going to pull up the same report you're looking at, Senator
Yeah,
Rosenwald, so I can help you
ED05.
find the number. I think you may be looking at the number of homeschoolers that got scholarships. Okay, so I'm going to their website, and you got to go to tax credits.
Well, it says who are currently attending a New Hampshire public school.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. I didn't bring a copy of that
Okay.
ED05 report with me to read it along with you. So I'll just pull it up, and then I'll be able to answer your questions about that report.
So, I mean, I guess, I put to you the question, how do you feel about the potential for double dipping between both the EFA program and this program if all income restrictions are lifted, leading to more children qualifying and presumably therefore less money available per scholarship?
Do you mind if I show you first where you can find the number of scholarships granted on the ED05?
Yep.
So if you go to page 2, you're looking at line 5 that says 1,224 scholarships. Okay? Do you see it?
That's the total number?
That's right.
Okay.
You got it? Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay,
So
great.
that's the addition then of the first page of numbers.
That's right. You've got it
Okay.
exactly right. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you have it right.
So how do you feel about the idea of,
I don't really have
Double
any,
dipping.
I don't really have any feelings to that effect. I mean, the legislature designed the programs the way they designed them, and I implement what they give me. To the prior speaker's point about a low-income family possibly needing more money than they might get in either one program, that does sound totally like a reasonable conclusion to me.
Senator Rosenwald, do you have further questions?
I guess
You look
not.
like you're assembling one in your head.
Well, I am, but I'm not going to ask it.
All right. Any further questions? Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. So we just heard from one of the co-sponsors of the legislation that it's her understanding that this will not create a large or, more applications into the program because the program is so low profile that it won't be flooded with applications. And we do know that the other program has aggressive advertising. Is there plans for, if this passes, are there plans for advertising this and getting the word out?
There aren't any plans for that.
So,
That's not part of this.
okay,
There's no piece of this contract that says that there has to be public awareness done around it. And to the prior speaker's credit, the money is used up every year. And so they're not extra available funds to go recruiting to find more students. The thing that she didn't mention, which I think leads into your question, Senator Altshuler, is there's actually 2 leading metrics in this education tax credit law that determine, kind of to your question too, Senator Rosenwald, not only does it specifically target low-income families, if you look at the eligibility in your line 5, which is section 1A, it actually also targets a child that's switching from a public school, and that's how the legislation was designed. And so if you are prioritizing kids that are coming from public school and you're prioritizing kids that are low income, meaning free and reduced lunch, my estimation would be you would use up the available fundraised dollars. Her second point to this technical discussion was that there were a small amount of families who would fit in this bucket. For example, she was describing a family that was in the program herself and then couldn't get a scholarship in the next year because her income went up. That is a small group of about 24 children who, in essence, had to be kicked out of the program because their income went up. And so if you were to think about it that way, of the number of students who wouldn't be kicked out, it's a small amount. Again, can't really speak to guessing what the future holds in people that apply. And the application is open from March until June.
Follow
Yeah.
up?
Thank you. So the assertion that this, targets and it benefits low-income students is off the table when in this legislation, lines 12 through 15 zero out a guideline of an income cap. So that does mean that literally anybody can be part of this program. So it's no longer, how can you assert that it would be a program for people who are low income when there's no income cap anymore? If the annual household income is less than or equal to 300% of the federal poverty guidelines, and then that's zeroed out.
Are you asking a logistic question about how we approve applications?
I'm saying, how can you assert that it's a low-income program when you don't have an income cap anymore?
Well, we'd have to prioritize low-income families to get to that 50% of families, right? So for example, if you had 3 applications in front of you, one of them was from a family who meets this free and reduced lunch income level, one of them who is coming from public school in 1A, and then your third one is a family who fits in that number 3 on line 11, the everyone else bucket, knowing that you have to meet these requirements, which application are you going to approve first?
Any further questions?
Yes, thank you.
Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing out the language starting on line 5, which you said it's only for students leaving traditional public schools or charter schools. But if I look at lines 7 and 8, it says,
7 and 8. Yeah.
or who is entering kindergarten or first grade. So
Yes.
it's
a good
really
point.
not only
That's a good point. Yes.
should we change that?
I wouldn't have any opinion of what you should or shouldn't do on the
Okay.
committee. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Mr. Myers. Is there anyone else not signed up to speak on Senate Bill 296? Seeing none, we had 106 people sign on the line, 5 in support, 101 in opposition for the bill, and I close the hearing. I had intended to exec some bills today, but we're missing 2 people from the committee, so we'll have to meet one more time to hammer that out. I believe we've had all the hearings that were assigned to the committee to date.
You couldn't exec.
This one? Let's hold off. Let's do them all at the same time,
Okay.
okay?
Because that one definitely go to finance.
Well, yeah, a lot of it.
Yeah.
All right, take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.